The world is a big place, and the hypothetical aerosolized death cloud, well, perhaps it's even bigger. So it's time we moved our research away from sleepy Muldraugh and shifted our view north to the town of West Point. Our real civilization. Here's a place where people are friendly, educated, organized, well stocked with everything they would need to overcome disaster. Only kidding. There is no place like that in all the world, apparently. Really, such considerations hardly enter into things, because where there are more people, there are more monsters along with more survival supplies, so you'll have to pay close attention and make your own decisions about what sort of place you want to be caught in when the invisible disease rolls in on the wind. Oh, by the way, we've said before that this is a zombie virus. No, actually, scientists say it's a bacteria. How about that? Such things matter not to today's deads, so let's go and see how they got on in West Point. Dead 7. Desmond Schroeder. Desmond was a promising survivor. He was going to be a rags to riches story. I mean, he didn't turn into a zombie on the decreasingly alleged, increasingly confirmed night of the decreasingly alleged, increasingly contained incident. He lived in a small one-bed bungalow slap bang in the middle of a busy suburb. A suburb where everyone seemed to have made the healthy life decision to walk to work that morning, combined with the less healthy decision to be sporting gaping wounds, bleeding eyes, and a hunger for uncooked human flesh. This time we can't pass this off as mere Muldraugh madness. It was clear to Desmond that something had gone very wrong. He decided he would go outside and ask what the problem was. I know all of you will not be as ludicrously stupid as Desmond, and I hope you're kicking yourself for thinking that rural Muldraugh was the sort of place where silly people like him were confined to. No, everyone's quite stupid when it comes down to it, which is why the Dead Files needs to exist. Congratulations, you are about to learn why asking zombies if they're just having a bad morning isn't going to win you friends. But it will win you an entertained audience, so I suppose we'll give his fate a brief rundown. First, he was scared back inside by the rather violent reaction of the commuting masses. Then those masses massed ever further at his doors and windows. Then the glass began to smash, and very likely Desmond was beginning to realise something was wrong. He decided to call the police. No. I needn't tell you how much of a waste of precious seconds that is. And on the cusp of oblivion like this, you really won't have seconds to waste. Desmond panicked. He needed something to fend off this home invasion, but he didn't have anything. You see, the disease of minimalism had already swept through his modest home, making it so bloody modest that you'd struggle to find half a pencil to write your own suicide note. Lucky we're capturing the whole thing for you then, eh? Not that we're... whatever. Look, Desmond, you don't even have a rolling pin, a bat, a decent can of beans to lob? No, apparently not. Again, I dare say that even the worst of you will do better than Desmond in this department, assuming that you live in an abode equipped with any household items whatsoever. The best no-mess Des could achieve was to take the garbage bag from his empty trash bucket and wield it as the world's least intimidating whip. By the time this disappointing arming up montage was done, the zombies were all throughout the house, so Desmond ran outside, still calling at the zombies to explain their uncouth behaviour. This evolved into general screaming as he ran from house to house, confirmed that yes, everyone was really zombified. You're supposed to be the exception, Desmond, and you're doing a terrible job of keeping it that way. Desmond died in short order. He leapt a fence to escape one horde and tumbled into another, in which he promptly disappeared, shall we say. I would summarise the lessons to be learned from Desmond, but our old one-word refresher works well enough here. Don't. If you must be a dead, don't be a Desmond. Desmond's score, for the record, was a solid 111 minutes from outbreak to breakdown, our worst yet. West Point hasn't impressed so far, but there are plenty of other survivors having a go at it, so let's check in on our next contender. Dead 8. Steward Odom. This person was not Desmond, already granting them a huge advantage. They even had possessions, and were quick to grab a huge kitchen knife when the morning of mornings came about. Stewart lived at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac on the west end of town. his yard open to the natural vegetation that clung to the sides of the huge Ohio River, West Point's principal geographical anchor. I should note, for those unaware, that this wasn't the famous West Point of the East Coast, but good old West Point, Kentucky, whose claim to fame could be summarized in the phrase, "At least it's not Muldraugh." But humble as it may be, it surely had a few bright sparks with enough sense to not let invading bacteria take over their brains. Does Stuart fit the bill? It depends on your point of view, so let us examine Stuart's strategy with a critical eye. First, he went outside and re-murdered any zombies near his house, doing so with an absolute lack of hesitation that tells us all we need to know about the community spirit in his neighborhood. Risky play, but it keeps them from breaking your windows, so let's give that a thumbs up. Then he looked back at his house, saw all the other zombies milling about down the street, and he had a simple idea. Nope, see ya. He walked off towards the river. Now, is that a good idea? We've already covered how walking away from your problems isn't really going to be an option. But as you may know, there are actually places where the bacteria, hasn't taken hold. The area around our studio is mostly good, for example. Mostly. So perhaps you can and should flee to greener pastures. And Stuart had another thing going for him, the aforementioned Ohio River. Wide and deep, to stand on its shores is to have a full 180 degrees from which you can't be attacked by monsters that are mostly land-dwelling. Mostly. One might argue you also can't escape in that direction when you inevitably are attacked from the landward side. But whoever the proverbial one was, it wasn't Stuart Odom. He wanted out, and was sure that walking along the riverside was the way. I think I'll get "There's no way out" printed on some shirts and hand them out to the soon-to-be infected zones just to make our official message on that quite clear. Despite taking no luggage, he actually managed to walk a fair distance downriver. The riverside was strangely dense with the monsters, but always he slipped past them, thinking that surely they would thin out as he left town. No, but we'll get to that. He passed the furthest outskirts of West Point, where occasional riverside houses might have provided well-supplied hideouts for enterprising survivors. If only they weren't also well supplied with people having this idea, who promptly got turned into zombies by those who came before them, and the cycle carries on such that most great spots like this are actually utter death traps. So don't you go having any bright ideas. Stuart was content to walk on by. However, soon evening was approaching, and his panic may have died down to the point when fleeing all semblance of civilization was seemingly less and less helpful. You'll miss toilets if you leave them all behind, you know. Hence, Stuart cleaved up a few residents of a nice little place he spotted from the riverside that evening and settled in for the night. Now, here's where things get difficult, and it's the blasted river to blame again. I shall explain that in a moment. First, let us cut Stuart's grand ambitions of exodus short. When he got up to leave the next morning, his new house was surrounded by foes, and he got tangled up in them trying to push back to the river, leading to his fruitless death. Well, perhaps not fruitless if it provides a learning opportunity for us. Why were so many zombies apparently following him downriver? Science time! Advanced research into the zombie bacteria, some of which was somehow done before the outbreak, despite that being literally impossible since the bacteria was unknown to science beforehand, tells us a few things about how zombies migrate. Yes, migrate. I know people keep saying they don't migrate, or form hordes, or have the ability to detect your general location by inhaling the infinitesimal residue trails in the air from your breath. But between us Dead Files fans, let's say that they do. Just out of scientific curiosity, of course. Great flows of water like the Ohio tend to carry a certain amount of the original bacteria-rich aerosol that may or may not have started all this, and also all the panicked exhalations of whole riverside towns. Hence, zombies are naturally attracted to this flow of stimulants, and are very often found congregating near long open spaces, such as rivers, highways, beaches, tunnels, hallways, anywhere someone might have been breathing, really. I'm sure your home doesn't meet this criterion, so worry not. But this may be a working hypothesis for why escaping along bodies of water like poor Stuart is a real amateur mistake, one that now you won't have to make. But it wasn't only Stuart trying this method out. Let's confirm our findings today with one more dead from West Point, whose antics only hammer home our deadly, dreadly message. Dead 9. Louisa Ashley. Louisa was a very hard-working woman in life, scrubbing and slaving at a small hotel in the heart of town. So much so that on the night of the disastrous accident that was no one's fault, she was just coming off an all-nighter preparing the bedrooms and conference space for a meeting of the local political party, the West Point Supremacy Alliance. Their main point was that because their West Point was further west than the other one, they should get… well, there was some debate on what reward this circumstance merited. But damn it if they weren't owed something. It was time to put West Point on the map. Again! And in bigger text. They got their wish, didn't they? Because here they are at the center of a huge experimental government program / unpredictable catastrophe / please forget the first thing I said. The result of this wasted effort was that Louisa was the only one in the hotel when the special time came about, leaving her peeking out of various bedroom windows at all the sickly shamblers spilling out into the streets all around. She quickly closed all the curtains, locked all the doors, and tried to compose herself in the face of sudden and quasi-certain doom. You should all practice this at home, by the way. It helps to get your initial panicking done as efficiently as possible. Then, to business. First, Louisa had to deal with a zombie that was pouring at a glass door. She hung a sheet across it to block the sight, but the glass was already starting to crack. She was forced to smash a wine bottle across the minibar in the breakfast hall, open the door, and stab the visitor through the chest. Louisa was on the weedy side, and her blow didn't have much oomph. Her wild, feral kicks and clawing did, though, a match for any zombie indeed. She beat the beast until it was still, then withdrew victorious, only bleeding from a single gaping wound on her stomach. Well done. Really, I'm not being sarcastic. Our first dead was infected already by this point, so you're doing better than Dora, and a heck of a lot better than Desmond. Louisa tied a bedsheet around her waist in a vague attempt to stay alive, then decided to take a more proactive course. She decided to flee to the river, away from the town full of monsters, she must have thought, and perhaps take the riverside trails to a safer place, like Louisville City up the river. Some of you are dying of laughter at the mention of that place. We'll take a peek up there soon enough. Louisa, dreaming impossible dreams, decided to sneak out of the back door and make a break for freedom. Ah, how our deads like to make breaks for freedom until they are broken all over, and even the sweet release of death remains devoid of freedom thanks to our pesky bacterial pals. Somehow, the end of the world managed to be worse than everything just ending. Great. Noting that the whole town was full of evil beasts and that no other human survivors were around, Louisa must have felt even more determined to make some kind of escape. Was it her ancient ancestral memories calling her to the river, a place where our progenitors found the vital resources to weather the daily struggle of existence in the wild? Or was it even the case that those immune to the zombie bacteria's sweet whispers instead enter some kind of symbiosis with the miniature beings that drives the host to seek out more mystery aerosol contagions to feed their new internal colonies? A preposterous hypothesis that no military scientific bodies would ever expect, seek, or investigate. Either way, soon both Louisa and plenty of the local zombies were enjoying a riverside stroll. Louisa stuck to the stringy copses of trees at the heights of the banks, where the zombies were sparser and her presence was less obvious. Noting that the crowds of river waders were larger upriver, she opted for a downriver course, following in the footsteps of poor Stuart, and they might even have met up if they weren't both concealed from view by the zombies gradually closing in around them at all times. Here, we are only really concerned with hammering home the lesson that large bodies of running water are hubs of infectious activity, and they are hence very dangerous to use for sustenance, navigation, solace, hope, or any other hard-to-come-by essentials of daily life. So we say, leave them alone. To remind yourself, recite these simple lines: running water, stunning slaughter, I'm alive, I'm high and dry. I can hear you already complaining that you need water to live. Do you? The zombies seem to get by okay. Maybe there really is some way to… Oh, you'll find something. It rains sometimes, doesn't it? The sky gods may favor you yet. So, to conclude, Louisa's death was a classic that many learned the hard way. You can't run, and you can't hide. I think all our deads are starting to piece this puzzle together for us, aren't they? She simply got tired and found that all the zombies who had noticed her hadn't, and so when she tried to return to town to find a hiding place, she did so with a cloud of monsters shadowing her every move. Battling this way and that with no weapons or training, she was an archetypal victim whose demise should be pitied no more than it should be emulated. She made it about 8 hours in West Point, a dismal score, but hardly different to the others at the end of the day. It's true that surviving in denser urban areas will be difficult. You're probably asking your television screen, sure, there are monsters everywhere, and I can't possibly escape. I've learned that much from your helpful program. But what can I do? Well, we'll get back to you on that. In the meantime, just make sure to never be caught dead acting like a dead. Those cities. Even if 1 in 1,000 was immune, that's so many people trapped. So many desperate moments. But what if 1 in 1,000 of them were more than immune? Symbiosis with the bacteria. Is that what this was all for? It's certainly all we can pray for.